The war in Ukraine didn't arrive without warning. The risk of NATO expanding into Ukraine was documented inside the United States well in advance. Those warnings were written down and acknowledged as far back as the 1990s. These warnings were ignored. In 2008, the U.S. ambassador to Russia sent a classified warning back to Washington. His name was William Burns. The written warning carried a title documented as "Niet means Niet." Ukraine joining NATO was described as the clearest red line Russia had, not just for Putin. Across the Russian leadership, Burns warned that pushing NATO into Ukraine could split the country, trigger Russian intervention, and risk tearing the country apart. This came from the U.S. ambassador to Russia, the official responsible for understanding Moscow's position. This was written years before the fighting started. After that, the push toward NATO membership continued. Burns wasn't the first warning. This wasn't new information. Russia used a public stage to say the same thing William Burns had said. At the Munich Security Conference, Vladimir Putin said, "NATO's expansion toward Russia's borders crossed a security line." Putin framed NATO expansion toward Russia's borders as a condition, not a request. That warning didn't change NATO's policy. NATO expansion continued. Once expansion continued, the warning no longer mattered. Putin's position was heard, but not taken seriously. In Bucharest, NATO met to decide Ukraine and Georgia's future. The United States was warned that Ukraine was a red line. Unlike in Munich, Putin spoke with visible anger. NATO chose to not allow Ukraine and Georgia to join immediately. Instead, NATO stated that Ukraine and Georgia would eventually become members. That was enough, because from Russia's side, the line wasn't about timing, it was about direction. And Putin saw the direction this was going. The consequences of moving NATO east had already been laid out years earlier. One of the architects of United States Cold War strategy said exactly where expanding NATO would lead. George Kennan helped design the system NATO existed within. In 1997, reacting to NATO expansion, he called it the most fateful error of American policy in the entire post-Cold War era. He warned it would inflame Russian nationalism, undermine reformers, and set the stage for future confrontation. This was someone who built the NATO containment framework in the first place. These warnings stacked up for the world to see. The pattern was consistent. Warnings about NATO expanding into Ukraine kept resurfacing. That same warning was echoed inside the United States Defense Department, including by William Perry, who cautioned that pushing NATO east toward Ukraine would provoke a Russian response. Warnings about NATO expanding into Ukraine kept popping up by United States officials, inside NATO discussions, and in Moscow's public warnings. They said the same thing. Ukraine wasn't treated like the others. Ukraine was Russia's red line. That position didn't change. This is the part that still gets avoided. The warnings arrived clearly and were understood where they landed. The warnings were taken in and then ignored. Not once, repeatedly. By the time the last warning was set aside, the space for a different outcome was already gone. From that point forward, events didn't need to be justified. They only needed to unfold. When people say the war in Ukraine was unpredictable, they're not describing history. They're describing a failure to acknowledge what was already documented. The warnings were early, and after they were ignored, there was no way.